You know how sci-fi movies always make quantum computing look like straight-up magic? Well, today's deep dive is about a real breakthrough, one that could actually get us closer to that sci-fi future.
Sounds exciting.
It is. We're going to unpack this research paper.
Okay.
It's from the University of Chicago, and it's called Next-Gen Quantum Computing, the Fusion of Atoms and Photonic Innovation. Basically, these researchers are trying to, merge atom arrays with photonics,
Interesting.
which could be a really huge deal for building more powerful quantum computers, I guess. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. You see, one of the toughest things in quantum computing right now is figuring out how to connect a bunch of quantum systems together.
Okay, so it's not enough to just have one super fast quantum computer.
Right, exactly.
We need to link them together.
You got it.
Why is that?
Imagine this. Even the most powerful computer, just one by itself, has limits. But if you can connect multiple computers together, you can tackle much bigger and more complex problems. The same idea applies to quantum computing. The challenge is figuring out how to connect these systems in a way that's efficient and reliable.
Okay, that makes sense. So how does this research paper try to do that? What are atom arrays
Yeah.
and photonics, and how do they fit into all of this?
Well, atom arrays are basically grids of neutral atoms that are held in place by lasers. Imagine like a microscopic chessboard where each square holds an atom. When you excite these atoms in a very specific way, they can actually perform quantum computations. And then you have photonics, which involves using light particles or photons to transmit information.
So the atom arrays are kind of like the brains of the operation, and the photonics are the communication system.
Yeah, that's a pretty good analogy. The atom arrays do the heavy lifting when it comes to computation, and photonics are key for collecting data from those computations and transmitting it to other systems.
But I'm guessing it's not as simple as just wiring them together.
Right.
What makes this so hard to do?
You're totally right. The problem is that these atom arrays are super fragile, like incredibly sensitive to interference. And integrating them with photonics, which involve lasers and light scattering, has been a major roadblock. Imagine trying to build a house of cards right next to a wind tunnel.
Yeah, not a good idea.
It's just not going to end well.
I'm starting to see the problem. So how did the researchers at the University of Chicago get around this? What's their big innovation?
Their solution is something called a semi-open chip design.
Okay.
And it minimizes interference between the atom array and the photonic chip.
Okay, I'm listening. Break that down for me. How does this semi-open design actually work?
So instead of directly integrating the two components, they've separated them into different regions on the chip.
Okay.
Think of it like a two-room apartment, right? One room is for computation. That's where the atom array does its quantum stuff. The other room is for interconnection. That's where the photonic chip handles communication.
So they've basically made a safe space for the atoms to do their work without being bothered by the photonics.
Yeah, precisely. By separating these regions, the chip protects the atoms from the laser scattering that happens during computation. And get this, they can actually move atoms between these regions whenever they need to.
No way.
Yeah.
Seriously.
It's like picture tiny workers moving between rooms on a miniature assembly line.
Wow, that's some serious micromanagement. But this separation sounds like a completely different approach. What kinds of problems did other methods run into that this one avoids?
Good question. Previous attempts, they often had trouble keeping the atom arrays stable and coherent when they were too close to the photonic parts.
I see.
The lasers and light scattering used in photonics would disrupt the quantum states of the atoms, and that led to errors and just made things less efficient. This semi-open design is really elegant. It just sidesteps those problems by keeping the two systems apart until it's time to share information.
That's a pretty clever solution. So how does this design actually help to connect multiple atom arrays?
Well, the chip has these tiny, tiny nanophotonic cavities built in, and they can extract photons from the atoms.
Okay.
These photons carry quantum information, and they can be sent to other systems using fiber optic cables.
Wait, hold on. So we're talking about individual atoms sending out photons that carry information.
Yeah.
How much information can one photon even hold?
It's not really about how much information a single photon can hold. It's more about how we can manipulate them, how we can entangle them. You have to remember that quantum information is fundamentally different from the bits that we use in regular computers.
Right, I remember us talking about that before. Quantum bits, or qubits, can be in multiple states at the same time, unlike our everyday bits, which can only be 0 or 1. That's where quantum computers get their power from, right?
Exactly. So by using these nanophotonic cavities to pull photons from the atoms in the array, we can basically transfer those qubits and their entangled states to other arrays, even if those arrays are physically far away from each other.
That's mind-blowing. So we're essentially building a quantum internet, where entangled atoms can talk to each other across huge distances. It sounds like something straight out of Star Trek.
It's a pretty cool concept. And while we're not beaming people up just yet, the potential for connecting lots of atom arrays to make a much bigger and more powerful quantum computing platform is definitely there.
Okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around all of this. So we've got atoms trapped in a grid, doing calculations, and then releasing photons that carry their quantum information to other atom arrays, potentially across long distances. This is some seriously mind-bending stuff. But how fast are we talking about here? How quickly can these cavities actually transmit information?
The team envisions having hundreds of these cavities all sending quantum information at the same time.
Wow.
It would be like having hundreds of processors all working together at the speed of light.
Now, that's what I call a quantum leap in processing power. So what's next? What are the next steps for this research?
Well, the research team has a couple of key areas they're focusing on.
Okay.
First, they need to figure out how to efficiently collect the photons coming out of the nanophotonic cavities. You know, these photons are carrying the important quantum information, so catching them is crucial. Second, they're trying to figure out how to generate entanglement over long distances.
Hold on. Entanglement over long distances. You mean like those two coins that always flip the same way, even if they're miles apart?
Yep, exactly.
It sounds incredibly difficult.
It is. It's a massive challenge. It requires insane precision and control over these delicate quantum systems.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to synchronize two watches down to the nanosecond, but they're miles apart.
That's a great analogy.
Oh, yeah.
So we've got these atom arrays performing computations, releasing photons, and then trying to entangle those photons with photons from other arrays, all while keeping them perfectly in sync. It sounds like a super delicate dance on a subatomic scale.
That's a perfect way to put it.
This is incredible.
Yeah.
I'm already starting to think about the possibilities, but we'll
Sure.
dive into those a bit later. First, I want to hear more about the specifics of this chip design. What makes it so unique and potentially groundbreaking?
Well, one of the key features of this semi-open chip design is its scalability.
Scalability, you mean like building blocks?
Yeah.
So you could, like, theoretically connect a bunch of these chips together
Yes.
to make even larger, more powerful systems.
It's like, snapping together Lego bricks to build more complex structures. Each chip could have its own atom array, doing its own calculations, and then they could all be linked together through the photonic network.
So instead of being limited by how big a single chip is,
Okay.
we could potentially create massive quantum computing clusters. That sounds pretty game-changing.
It really does, yeah. And remember, each chip could have hundreds of these nanophotonic cavities,
Right.
all transmitting information at the same time.
Whoa, so we're talking about exponential increases in computing power. Okay, I got to ask, what could we actually do with all this power? It's one thing to talk about all the technical stuff,
Right.
but I'm really curious about the real-world applications.
The possibilities are huge, and that's what makes this research so exciting. Let's start with medicine. Imagine being able to design personalized drugs
Okay.
tailored to your specific genetic makeup.
Okay, so instead of a one-size-fits-all approach,
Exactly.
we could have treatments that are specifically designed for each individual,
Precisely, quantum computers could analyze super complex biological data,
like our DNA sequence.
like your DNA sequence, at an unbelievable speed,
Wow.
identifying potential drug targets and predicting how your body would respond to different treatments.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah.
But how would these quantum computers actually do that? We're talking about biological processes, not just crunching numbers.
It all comes down to the ability of quantum computers to simulate complex systems. Many biological processes, like protein folding or drug interactions, are incredibly difficult to model using classical computers. It would take years, maybe even centuries, to simulate these interactions in detail. But quantum computers...
With your ability to harness the weirdness of quantum mechanics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Could potentially solve these problems in a fraction of the time.
So it's like having a superpowered microscope that can zoom in on the tiniest details of our biology and predict how different molecules will interact.
That's a really good way to think about it.
Yeah.
And this could lead to breakthroughs in drug discovery, disease diagnosis, personalized medicine.
That's mind-blowing. But I'm guessing the applications go way beyond just medicine, right?
Oh, absolutely. Let's move on to material science. Imagine designing materials with properties that we've never seen before.
Like what?
Like super strong but ultra lightweight alloys for aircraft,
Oh, wow.
or incredibly efficient solar panels that can capture almost every photon of sunlight.
So we're talking about revolutionizing entire industries, from
Yes.
transportation to energy.
Absolutely.
But how would quantum computers help us design these materials? It's not like they can physically build things, right?
It's all about simulation and prediction. Quantum computers could help us understand how atoms and molecules interact at the quantum level,
Okay.
allowing us to predict the properties of different material combinations before we even try to make them in a lab.
So it's like having a virtual laboratory where we can test out tons of material combinations without actually having to create them. That would save so much time and resources.
Exactly. And it would let us explore a much wider range of possibilities than we could ever hope to achieve with traditional experiments.
This is incredible. It feels like we're talking about a future where we can do almost anything. What other applications am I missing?
Well, one area that's generating a lot of buzz is artificial intelligence. Quantum computing could lead to a whole new era of AI,
Yeah.
with machines capable of learning and solving problems at levels that are way beyond anything we see today.
Okay, I have to admit, that one makes me a little nervous. We've all seen those sci-fi movies where AI takes over the world.
Right.
But seriously, how would quantum computers change things for AI?
Think about the kinds of problems AI has trouble with today, like natural language processing, image recognition, and complex decision-making.
Right.
These tasks often involve huge amounts of data and need algorithms that can adapt and learn from new information. Quantum computers, with their massive processing power and ability to handle complex data sets, could potentially change these areas in a big way.
So we're talking about AI that can actually understand human language,
Yeah.
recognize patterns that we miss,
Uh-huh.
and make decisions based on complex data analysis.
Exactly. Imagine AI assistants that can not only understand your commands, but can also figure out what you need and offer really personalized recommendations.
Okay.
Or imagine self-driving cars that can handle even the craziest traffic with ease and safety. These are just a couple examples of how quantum-powered AI could change our world.
It's both exciting and a little bit scary to think about all the ways quantum computing could change our lives. But we have to remember that this technology is still pretty new. What are some of the biggest challenges that researchers still need to figure out?
One of the biggest is scalability. While this research from the University of Chicago is a big step forward, we're still a long way from building large-scale, fault-tolerant quantum computers.
Yeah.
These systems are super sensitive to their environment,
Right.
and keeping the qubits stable and coherent is a huge engineering challenge.
So it's not just about connecting a few atom arrays together.
Right.
It's about making sure those connections work reliably.
Yeah.
And that the whole system can run without errors.
Precisely. And that's just one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
We also need to come up with new quantum algorithms that can actually take advantage of all this processing power. The way we program quantum computers is totally different from classical programming.
Okay.
So there's a whole new field of quantum software development that we need to create.
It sounds like there's a ton of work to do, but the potential payoff is huge. I'm really interested in the specific research that's being done to tackle these challenges.
Yeah.
Could you give us a glimpse into what's going on in labs around the world?
Of course. One area of intense research is focused on developing new types of qubits that are more robust and less susceptible to environmental noise.
So it's kind of like trying to build a more stable house of cards.
Yeah,
Finding qubits that can withstand a bit more shaking without falling apart.
that's a good analogy. Researchers are exploring all sorts of approaches,
Okay.
from using exotic particles like Majorana fermions to taking advantage of the properties of topological materials.
Okay, those sound pretty complex.
Yeah.
But I guess that's to be expected when you're dealing with the quantum world. So let's say we do manage to overcome these challenges and we start building large-scale, fault-tolerant quantum computers. What then? What are the biggest, most impactful problems you think we could tackle with this technology?
That's a great question, and I think it really shows how quantum computing could help us address some of humanity's toughest challenges. Let's start with climate change. Imagine being able to model the Earth's climate with incredible accuracy,
Okay.
taking into account all the complex interactions between the atmosphere, the oceans, and human activities.
So we're talking about creating a virtual Earth,
Yeah.
being able to simulate all the factors that contribute to climate change and then test out different strategies for mitigation.
Exactly. With quantum computers, we could potentially run simulations that are way more complex than anything possible with classical computers.
Wow.
This would allow us to make smarter decisions about how to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, develop new renewable energy sources, and adapt to the effects of climate change that are already happening.
That would be amazing.
Eh.
We can move beyond theoretical models and actually see how different interventions would play out in a realistic simulation. It would be like having a crystal ball for the planet. What other world-changing possibilities can you think of?
Well, let's not forget about how quantum computing could revolutionize medicine. We talked earlier about personalized drug design.
Right?
But imagine being able to simulate the entire human body at a molecular level.
Whoa, hold on. Simulating the entire human body. That sounds like something out of a science fiction movie. How could we even start to do that?
It would be insanely complex, of course, but with quantum computers, it might not be as crazy as it sounds.
Okay.
Remember, quantum mechanics governs how molecules and atoms behave, and those are the building blocks of life.
Right.
A quantum computer could simulate the interactions of billions, maybe even trillions of these particles, allowing us to understand how diseases develop, how drugs interact with the body, and even how aging works at a fundamental level.
Wow, that's incredible. It's like having a virtual laboratory for the entire human body. We could test out new treatments, see what happens with different lifestyle choices, and maybe even reverse the aging process.
It's a fascinating thought, and while there's still a lot of research and development to do, quantum computing has huge potential to change healthcare.
I'm starting to see that quantum computing isn't just about faster computers. It's about a whole new way of thinking about problems.
Yeah.
It's about using the weirdness of the quantum world to solve problems that have seemed impossible until now.
You got it. Quantum computing isn't just a small improvement. It's a completely new way of doing things. It's like going from a horse-drawn carriage to a spaceship. It opens up so many possibilities.
This has been an amazing deep dive. We've explored how atom arrays and photonic chips work. We've gone into the crazy world of quantum entanglement, and we've talked about the world-changing potential of this technology. It feels like we've only just begun to understand what's possible.
We have, and that's what makes this field so exciting. It's always changing, with new discoveries and breakthroughs all the time.
Well, one thing's for sure, this is just the start of the quantum computing revolution. And who knows, maybe one of our listeners will be the next person to make a big discovery in this field.
The future of quantum computing is bright, and I hope everyone stays curious, keeps exploring, and never stops asking questions. The answers to some of humanity's biggest problems might just be found in the quantum world.
Well said. This deep dive has made me feel amazed, and I really want to learn more. I can't wait to see what happens next with quantum computing. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep diving deep.